We're going to get started with a very exciting keynote speech from Andreas Schwab. It is my great pleasure and privilege to introduce Mr. Schwab this morning. He has been serving as a member of the European Parliament since 2004, representing Germany's Christian Democratic Union as part of the European People's Party. He is coordinator for the EPP in IMCO, the Committee on the Internal Market and Consumer Protection, which is the key committee in shaping policies that enhance consumer rights and market fairness. And in particular, he has been the Parliament's rapporteur on the Digital Markets Act. Mr. Schwab has been at the forefront of Parliament's efforts to regulate the major digital platforms. The design of the DMA and the speed of its adoption, I think, are due in significant measure to his efforts. Beyond helping to create this landmark piece of legislation, Mr. Schwab has engaged in the broader debate about digital market regulation, and due to his PhD in law, is very familiar with gatherings such as the one we're having today. He is the perfect speaker for our event, where we have brought together not only many people from Europe, but experts from the US, Australia, South Korea, and the UK. So, in short, Andreas Schwab is a key leader in Europe and globally on the ongoing dialogue about the regulation of digital markets, and we are extremely fortunate to have him with us today. Please join me in welcoming Andreas Schwab.
Thank you so much, Fiona, for that very kind introduction. Let's try that I can fulfill and accomplish that task that you have given to me. First of all, I would like to thank you for having invited me together with Alyssa. This is a great privilege for me to speak here this morning in front of you. And I hope that we can, for the next half an hour, make a common way through how the DMA got into life and what we expect now to happen and what will be the challenges in the next months and weeks. And I want to start with that popular saying that is probably less popular here, but outside, that the Americans, the US are inventing and innovating, the Chinese are exploiting, and the Europeans are regulating. That's a bit the most boring analysis that you could do, but unfortunately, there is some truth to it. And therefore, we are doing that conference at a very timely moment, because the 7th of March, in 1 month exactly, there is the 1-year anniversary of the implementation of the DMA and the obligations for the gatekeepers to be respected. In March 2025, so soon, decisions by the European Commission on several non-compliance investigations, Google, Meta, and Apple, will be done. There will be also a decision on the DSA with X. And therefore, given the complicated geopolitical surrounding with the new administration in the US, with all the tariff debates that they have with China, big tech CEOs associating the European tech regulation, criticizing them, it's a very good start for this conference to operate, and I'm very happy to be here. I think that if we have a bit of a look back, we have to say that this story hasn't started in 2014 with the European Parliament making a resolution to break up, we didn't mention the company, the search engine market, because we always were very polite. And we didn't look to catch the name of a company. And that should remain our line, that we try to focus on the key concerns. The problem is for sure that normal citizens, they are not like you here. They don't understand what they pay with, what they leave with these companies from their IP, from their personality. They don't see how addicted they may become, or their kids might become. And therefore, there is a real role for the new political leadership in the European Commission, with 2 women, one from Finland and one from Spain, dealing together with the DMA and the DSA. Now you will say, too many cooks, they destroy the food. Yes, that's for sure a risk. But at least like that, you have also a balance of influencing the decision-making process. And this can be sometimes, we remember, and that's the reason why I start with 2014, that the commissioner at the time didn't want to act at all. Maybe he thought it's the economy stupid, it's the business stupid, can be, But also the economy and the business, it's not only one day, it's a long history. And what is good for one business today might not be good for all the businesses tomorrow. So fair competition, and that should be my second reflection element, fair competition is a cornerstone of the EU treaties. Open competition favors small players and supports, and that is something that in Germany has been a big problem in our history, that fair competition does support open and democratic societies as it restricts monopolies and oligopolies. And if you see at the moment what's happening in the world, especially also in this country, you rather would see plenty of companies competing with each other for the best solution instead of having one or two sitting on the president's knees. And therefore, we should believe all together, and I'm totally convinced that also the American business community by 99% will support this approach, because in the end, most of these companies that we speak about are located in the US. And therefore, we should not be naive. All the critical comments about how the market is developing came from the beginning from American companies, from within this country. And for that reason, we can be very optimistic that this will be fixed soon, because I know plenty of American companies that don't want to have tech oligarchs sitting in the White House, but open competition and fair competition. And I want to stress also this, and I want to, because I see Jacques Kremer here, I want also to say that this has been, let's say, in that clarity told to me at the conference I did at the Conseil d'Etat in France, that the German competition policy framework, which has been, let's say, also influencing strongly the European competition policy framework, has been introduced partly or mostly by the Americans onto the German economy. Because the Americans at the time said, we never again want to see such an oligopolistic structure of a German economy, thereby influencing political decisions and obstructing the democratic processes. And it's therefore a bit strange that what we see today, 80 years after, in Germany, it went for good, that it comes back here. But I don't believe it will stay, but it's all the time a question of politics, and politics are changing. A second element for this DMA law to happen was that we had regular reports from the European Commission over market trends that were noting an increased concentration in tech despite the existing European competition policy and its enforcement. We had therefore regular resolutions of the European Parliament calling since 2010 on the European Commission to conduct a secular inquiry into, for example, online advertising and search engines. And I want to remember you that former heads of state and government in Europe, I think 25 or I don't know how many, have recently written a letter to Ursula von der Leyen asking for the breakup of Google, especially in the area of the online, not only online search, but also online advertising market, because the way of tech in this area of news has destroyed most of the democratic information sources that there were. In different countries, in different ways. In France, there was always a bit of more state support to media, with all the risks and positive sides it has. There is still, but there is still a bit of a dependency towards the public donors. In Germany, it was more independent, with now the situation that they are all broken. Other national markets, I don't know that much. But what we can see is for sure a concern that heads of state, when they were in office, they didn't dare to say. Now, since they're out, they do. And therefore, it's a topic that we have to really assess seriously. The DMA so far is a global trendsetter. Now you will say, how can three letters be so prominent? Yes, there is for sure an a reflex of countries against the big American gatekeepers behind this. This will now soon be also against Chinese gatekeepers or big companies. And therefore there is an emotional element to it. But it's also true that we have seen over the last 15, 20 years that the application of classical competition law has always become too late and further too late. Because classical competition policy is based on a wrongdoing that is proven after and then sanctioned. But the more difficult it becomes to prove the wrongdoing, the more complicated it becomes to follow the market, the more difficult it is, and it has proven to be, to apply the law. And therefore, the big change that this law has brought, because in the end, it has just been putting together existing policy requirements under competition policy law that there were already. The big change it brings is the switch from ex post application to ex ante, and thereby changing the rules of the burden of proof. And this is the contrast to classical competition policy. Now, retrospectively, we probably could have also thought about such a tool to be introduced earlier, because in my region, where there are plenty of suppliers of Mercedes and Volkswagen and BMW and so on, when a company was closed in the 90s, no one was wondering, why have they really closed? Has Volkswagen reduced the prices too much and has them making run out of business? Was there any cartel behind that you couldn't see? It's difficult to assess this, but what is obvious is nowadays it's much easier to understand that if there is a music button moved from one side in the mobile to another, everyone can see it, everyone can make a conclusion, might be wrong or right, but it's getting more transparent. And this is for sure also a very positive effect of this technical surrounding, where normal citizens can make their own understanding of what the market is bringing to them. I think they are still scared or confused about how to take the right conclusions, but still the transparency is growing, and therefore the DMA is built on this new transparency and also on the existing antitrust cases over the last years, enabling a catalog of systematic anti-competitive practices that apply ex ante. Now, these practices that apply now ex ante, they are for sure too long. Those that are lawyers here, having ever focused on a concrete case, will complain that the wording is too broad, too long, and therefore difficult to be enforced in one decision. And that's what we see right now. The Commission is struggling, although they have been honestly proposing these texts largely, and we have been managing not to change them that much so that we could keep the law sound, but they are struggling to enforce it in a way they wanted to do. And laws have always become longer and longer. If you go back 200, 300 years, there were only a few words making a law. Now it's several pages. And this development gives now a chance to the gatekeepers to interpret this variety of opportunities that there are in a way that may fit them better. And we should be very clear. We respect their IP. We respect their innovation. We respect the enormous power digital has brought to us. So it's not about just destroying existing technical solutions. It's not about just being negative about tech. It's about assessing a situation in which the economic power behind very often is based purely on wrongdoing and on unfair business practice. And if you have that very tough assessment of the companies, you will also be very easy and fast in taking some companies on a better stance of the GAFAM and a few others than others. Now, for example, at the moment, we have a huge debate in Europe about a hotel reservation platform. And for sure, there are probably plenty of reasons to complain. But there is also no doubt that when you want to go today to Spain looking for a nice holiday apartment, you have a better choice than ever before, because you can find everything online and you know exactly how to negotiate the price. So there are pros and cons. Specifically on this, there are pros and cons also on tech companies that really look for innovation of technical products. Should they be more interoperable? Yes. But the main thing is not this. The main thing comes into the game when your whole economic success is based ultimately on the non-recognition of the existing laws and IP that have been protected before. Therefore, it was not so difficult to create that political consensus in Europe on the principles of fair competition, also in digital. And I want to re-insist on the fact that 28 or 25 former heads of state and government have been making this call, especially on one company, but probably they could have also been thinking about others, because they are concerned about how democracy can function with this. And I think objectively there is a point they have, and therefore we take this very seriously. And the European Commission has already taken important decisions. Some of us should reflect on the Microsoft decision in 2001. Was a long story before. Finally, it went through. Microsoft is still a gatekeeper. They are very happy to be in that list, but considerably with their business, they still can be there. There have been rulings against Google in 2024. There have been rulings against other companies. And therefore, the DMA is setting the trend worldwide, looking for fair competition principles to be applied. Now, the challenge is for sure to make that in a reasonable way that stands up in court, that are respecting, let's say, Western, if I may say so, still Western law principles. Because we have seen in Brazil a court decision against X. We have seen plenty of court decisions. And now it's true that if a court decides, it's always formally independent and the decision therefore to be upheld. But for sure, you get a bit of a flavor of what negative emotions in populations can also bring to court decisions. And like that, the whole, let's say, tech regulation, the whole need for keeping markets worldwide open, being jeopardized by decisions that are not fully based on the reflections that should be done. Tech companies are fueling the debate with their own action in courts and also ahead of courts. We have seen that in the recent months on plenty of occasions. TikTok went against the ECJ ruling of July 2024, which upheld, but the court has upheld the decision to designate them as a gatekeeper. Apple is challenging the Commission's decisions to classify iMessage as a CPS. And there can be plenty of other examples that need a lot of attention to understand the complexity of the problem under competition policy principles. iMessage seems for the most of people just a way to communicate. But if you have heard that in the US you are put aside if you are in the green box and not in the blue camp, you know what it means. But who knows this? It's very complicated. And it's also true that citizens in Europe prefer to take the cheap, cost-free WhatsApp channel instead of using SMS, which is also regulated and for free now, but not as sexy as the new services, but they offer a lot of data to the company. In any event, we have now ahead of us, and I think that's also a bit what everyone wants to consider, and what Filomena surely would have reported here. No, I think she will be online. But I will take the time to introduce a few points on the cases that are on the table at the moment. It's the case on Apple on steering, because under Article 5, Paragraph 4 of the DMA, developers distributing their apps via an app store should be able, free of charge, to inform their customers of alternative, cheaper purchasing possibilities, steer them to those offers, and allow them to make purchases. Looks great, but you see already the difficulty to explain the concrete element, which gives so many words, so much flavor and variety, that it might be difficult to come to a very clear solution that stays in court. And that's the concern of the European Commission. And I think we as policymakers have all the reasons to support the European Commission to make these cases court-proof. We cannot allow ourselves now, for whatever election that happens, to be vocal on stuff that cannot be proven in court, to arguments that cannot stand up in court. And therefore, we will give that investigation that has been opened on 25th of March a chance to happen. Preliminary findings issued by the Commission on the 24th of June, according to which Apple's steering rules for the App Store prevent app developers from freely steering consumers to alternative channels for offers and content. And we will see what the Commission will come up with on the 25th or before the 25th. Then we have Google and self-preferencing. The Google history is a difficult one because we have started the procedure under the old 101, 102 rules with the problems of the burden of proof being with the Commission. The Commission has taken a decision in one area. People say that it's not a very satisfying decision. Other decisions have now to happen under the DMA. There is that difficulty of cooperation between the DMA and the time before the DMA, because under Article 6.5 of the DMA, gatekeepers shall not treat more favorably services and products offered by the gatekeeper itself than similar services or products of a third party. This is for sure a traditional problem, but for a normal user that wants to click very quickly in the App Store and buy a service, it's a must here much more than in every supermarket where children are invited to take some chocolates in front of the cash desk. There is a higher need here to give in that little screen that gives you the choice, at least key reflections, key choices that you couldn't look for if you don't have the time differently. And then there is, it's the same investigation that was opened on 25th of March to determine whether Alphabet's display of Google search results may lead to self-preferencing in relation to Google's vertical search services. This was all 25th of March of last year, and therefore the Commission will come up soon, will have to come up soon with decisions on both. And then we have the third case, it's Meta on data combination and its pay and consent model, where the Commission has said that it doesn't respect Article 5.2 of the DMA, where gatekeepers must seek users' consent for combining their personal data between designated CPS and other services. Now, there are plenty of questions why there are not more procedures already opened. There are plenty of questions why some of these procedures are not yet closed with big fines. And I want to be very clear, big fines are not an aim in itself. What we want to do is to deter companies from breaching European law. And in the case where you can earn an awful lot of money, and in the end, in a capitalistic system, it can also be European investors that have brought the money to the US that get the return on investment there. We want these companies not to disrespect the European law and to make this clear forever, especially in this extremely fastly moving markets. We have also to look for respective fines. So the first DMA compliance decisions as a strong symbol to mark the start of the mandate of the new Commission is our call, and Ms. Ribera and Ms. Wilkun are working on it. And decisions will have to be seen in a broader European competitiveness challenge. The Draghi report, which is a report about where Europe should move economically, estimates that we will need an additional 800 billion per year to be invested into European competitiveness at large. We don't do these laws to make Europe more competitive, but we should not be naive in believing that Europe has a surplus in relation to the US. Factually, the US have a surplus in goods and services in relation to the European Union. And with the change from the economy with goods to the economy with services, it's quite likely that that surplus, that American surplus, will even grow. Now, we are not naive because we also see that good companies and good services merit to be bought, even if they are coming from the US or elsewhere. But we cannot neglect that there is a structural imbalance that we have to fix, and where we have also to fight for the European economy. The European single market wants to remain, and I'm fighting myself for that, a real condition, a precondition for all companies of the world that allow competitiveness and a fair competition market. Now, you have also been asking, what is the ambition that the European Parliament wants this Commission to deliver on? And there I want to come back at the end on, I think, a very famous quote on The Economist, who said, I think 3 years ago, with the question, is data as important, as valuable as oil? And they said, no, it's as important as daylight. So data in a data economy, it's everything. You cannot do anything without data in a data economy. And therefore, we should not confuse ourselves with examples like oil or whatever. Data are everything in a data economy, and therefore we have to make sure that we can keep data available for everyone, that everyone can protect his or her data, or everyone can share his or her data with whom he wants. And to make that sure, we need, as I said already, to enforce the DMA in the area that are foreseen, but at the same time, we should now use the opportunity to block already still open markets like cloud and AI with the DMA to make them markets where there is competition from the very first moment, even though the access to capital might be different between Apple, Google, and all the others, but the access to the market should be the same for everyone. Is that the case now? Not at all. We see already, just this morning when I woke up a bit jet lagged, I just saw this morning an article that Apple is investing. No, sorry, Amazon. Amazon is investing highly in new cloud server capabilities because they need it for their AI models. And there is no doubt that already now in the Google system, in the Apple system, AI tools are integrated. And what does it mean? It means that if you want to have an AI system, an AI tool that you have chosen, maybe because you are French speaking and you want to have a fresh air from Mistral, you cannot do it because it will be already out of connection with the operating system from the very beginning. For sure, this is very difficult to be implemented. For sure, this is very dangerous because you could also stop the fastest innovation that might be done with their own system to a slower and more complex innovation at longer terms with alternative systems. But if we want to take fair competition seriously, the Commission has to deliver on AI and on cloud soon under the DMA, and to make also some sort of preventive decision to allow these services to be built on those operators that you or me, that we choose, and that are not imposed by those companies where we have bought our mobile phones. I think that's the call and the ambition that the European Parliament has. And we need for sure some academic insight into our positions that are sometimes purely political. And therefore, Fiona, I want to also conclude with the fact that it's true that when I was a student, I was eager to speak on scientific and academic topics. But as a politician, you always try to communicate in a way that not only students or professors understand what you say, but everyone. And I hope I could combine both here. Thank you so much.